Hi, this is Rabbi Chaim Coffman. I want to welcome everyone to our second installment in the Torah portion of the week. This week is Parshas Noach, so we're going to start from the beginning of the Parsha. It says that these are the offspring of Noach. Noach was a righteous man, perfect in his generations, and Noach walked with God. So the problem, or I should say the obvious problem in this verse, is it says that he was righteous, perfect in his generations. Plural. Why does it say his generations? It should have just said his generation. So Rashi learns that there are two ways to look at Noah. One is positive and one is negative. The positive is that had Noah been in another generation, Noah would have been even greater. The negative is had he been in another generation, he wouldn't have been looked at as very great at all. So now I want to analyze just a little bit what exactly this means. What's the difference between both explanations? So if we understand that Noah and his children were the only ones saved in that generation, right? Everyone else was wiped off the face of the map. So we could say that since he was saved, then he was looked at as the righteous of that generation. All the more so, had he been in another generation, he would have been even that much greater. I mean, he takes in all the animals, and his wife and kids come in, and that's it. Everyone else gets wiped off the face of the map. So why should we take it as a negative? If you look at the negative, you see that Noah got saved, but he was in a terrible generation. So he was just as good. He was just good enough in order that he was saved and his children as well. But had he been in another generation, then he wouldn't have been looked at as as very much at all. It's a little bit hard. It's a little bit hard to fathom why he wouldn't have been considered as great, because if he hung around greater people, all the more so, he should have been that much greater. We can take it one step further. The Zohar says that Noah himself, that the flood is called the flood of Noah. Now, Noah didn't cause the flood, right? God says that man was evil, and man was corrupted, and man had corrupted the animals as well. So that being the case, well, why is it called the flood of Noah? I mean, after all, he's the one that got saved. So we have to look back now at who Noah was and what transpired during his generation, because it really gets into the question of what our potential is and how we're able to reach that potential. So Noah himself, even though he was saved in that generation, if we look at what the final decree is, right? Because the Torah says that God's going to wipe out he's going to wipe out everybody because people came corrupt and it was filled with robbery. So the question is, what was the sin that destroyed the world, right? Rashi, others say that the final nail in the coffin for the world for mankind and animals to exist, that had to be wiped out, was the fact that people stole. Now, others say, and Rashi included, that it wasn't just robbery going on. That was the final seal. What transpired was there was other things going on. There was immorality. There was idolatry. Now, the big three that a Jew, wherever he is and whatever is going on, if a non-Jew or a Jew would put a gun to his head and say, I want you to bow down to this guy in a stick, or show a little fat guy, reference to JC and a reference to Buddha, and you say, bow down to him or I'm going to kill you. Under any circumstances, a Jew has an obligation to give up his life. There are three cardinal sins that a Jew has to give up his life for: immorality, murder, and idolatry. Robbery is not one of them. Now, there are many times in the Torah it says don't steal, right? That just as a side point, if you look at the Ten Commandments, it says don't steal, it means don't kidnap. Right? A little bit of novelty for some people because they say, oh, don't steal means don't steal. But there are a number of verses that are discussed in the Torah that say don't steal. So the one in the Ten Commandments doesn't mean that. So they commentaries learn out why there it has to mean kidnapping, but that's not the topic for now. But it's not one of the 3 cardinal sins you have to give up your life for. So if we look at what was going on in that generation and the fact that that was the final judgment, even though there were other worse things going on. Why, let's just analyze one point of that, why should it be that stealing or robbery was considered so bad? So we can look at that in a way to see what's the difference between secular law and Torah law. So one of the great Torah giants of the last generation, Moshe Feinstein, Zecher Tzaddik Levracha, may his name be blessed, said there's a tremendous difference. The difference is, if you look at secular law, the laws are there to protect the people. Doesn't say it's going to make them better people. It's just to protect them, because if there were no laws, then there'd be utter chaos. There'd be even more chaos than what we see today. Hard to imagine, but there would even be more chaos. So that being the case, the laws are to protect man from himself. The Torah looks at laws of what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, in a totally different way. Ramosha says, you know how we look at it? We look at it, the laws are there not just to guard us. They're there to make us better. To make us better people. To help us reach whatever potential that we have. So, if people started running around and stealing from each other, and stealing the amount that a person wouldn't be obligated to take them to court, this person took a little, another person took a little, or even took more, right? Even if you took more, each one stealing from the other, that's utter chaos. Society cannot function. Imagine, a number of people walk into a bank. Thank you very much. I'm going to take this. I'll take that. Take a little more. Society would never be able to function. You tell me, but it's not one of the big 3 that you have to give up your life for. That's true. And the other 3 are much more severe. But there'd be a tremendous breakdown in society if robbery would be, God forbid, permitted. I mean, if you look at the big 3, you're not allowed to murder, right? That seems definitely pretty bad, right? Killing somebody for whatever reason, unless it's self-defense, right? Self-defense, if you had to kill them and there's no other way around it, okay, but in general, you're not allowed to kill. And it doesn't matter within Judaism whether you pull the plug on someone or you shoot them in the head. The exact same thing, right? Murder's murder. That's pretty severe. Immorality, that breaks down the family structure. So that we can understand can also be tremendously severe. And the third is idolatry. Right? Idolatry, why is idolatry so bad? Does God really care? If a person bows down to this guy in a stick, or he bows down to the short little fat guy, or a totem pole, or who knows what. Why should God really care? So when a person believes or bows down to something that has no power, and you give it power. See, within Judaism, nothing has power unless God wills it. So the wind can't say, you know what? I think it would be very nice if I made this huge hurricane and I wanted to destroy, a whole bunch of houses in a certain area. So the wind says, all right, I'm going to go do it. God says, I don't think so. But the wind says, no, I'm going to huff and puff. God says, go ahead, try. Not going to go if God doesn't will it. If God says, yeah, I'll make an earthquake in the Atlantic, and I'm going to cause a tsunami to destroy half of Southeast Asia, because I want to put Atlas back on the map. Right? I want to give them more money so they can sell more maps. If God wills it, it will happen, and we saw that it did. So this tsunami went crazy and destroyed quite a bit, but only because God willed it. So these forces have power, but they only have power if God allows them to have power. So if we worship something that has no power by itself, right, that's idolatry. So Pharaoh, others, the commentators say, made that mistake. They understood God created the world. But they made a mistake and said he was so lofty, he didn't have a connection to man, and he created the world and he left. Right? So I would ask the obvious question. If God is omnipresent and omnipotent, means he's everywhere and he knows the thoughts of everything, can you imagine, where does an omnipresent being go? Like, he represents the entire world. He can run through a black hole, get through the other side, take all the planets and start juggling them. Right? Pluto might be a little bit too cold, but whatever. He'll offset that. He'll take Saturn, play with the rings, and do all these interesting things. He can do that if he wants. But you can't give these forces power by themselves. So Pharaoh and others made the mistake and said these things God left over and gave them power because he's too lofty to deal with man. And since he's so far up there and, much holier than, all of us put together, so we understand that maybe he wouldn't have a connection to man. But where does an omnipresent being go? Where's he hiding? Right? He's behind this rock. Boo! Like, where is he? We have no, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So to say that he left over these powers, these forces, the wind, rain, fire, right? All these different things he left over and gave power to in nature. So if he really put all these things, into action, then that would mean that when stuff happens, i.e. earthquakes, tsunami, whatever the case is, then there's no rhyme or reason why it happens. It only happens because, meteorological, whatever. You can say global warming, call it whatever you want. But it happens not because of God. The problem is, and it's not going to be the topic, but the problem is, if these things do happen, and there is chaos, and there are hurricanes, and properties damaged or destroyed, lives are lost, and if we say God's in control of everything, then you have to ask the question, why did he do it? Or the famous question, why bad things happen to good people? All right, maybe one day we'll hit that more in depth. Be that as it may, for us, we want to understand that so anything you give a power to that doesn't have power by itself, then that is called idolatry. So idolatry is bad, and that'll be something you'd have to give up your life for as a Jew, anytime, any place, because you take God right out of the world. You say these forces are independent of him. Nothing is independent of God. He envelops everything. He created everything from the beginning. Right? In Parshas Noach at the very beginning, Genesis chapter 1, verse 1, it says, in the beginning, or in the beginning of creation, or creating, God created the heavens and the earth. So what was he doing beforehand? What happened beforehand? Right? So the Ramban there says, someone who makes the mistake and says there was somebody there before God is a heretic, has no place in Torah. I understand he doesn't say he loses his place in the world to come, but he said he basically denies God, which we'd probably agree that is pretty bad. So if you give power to something outside of God, essentially you deny him. So we understand why these big three are extremely important, and that a Jew would have to give up their life rather than transgress. So, but robbery is not one of them. So even though robbery is not as severe per se, it's a lav, it's a negative commandment. You're not allowed to steal. The thing is, though, if the entire society was based on that, then society wouldn't function. And already when society's not going to function, then there's no hope. And when there's no hope, God says, okay, I have to throw in the towel. I know I created man, and I know man was supposed to reach higher levels. And, I created man for those righteous people that will reach higher levels, but I can't let this exist. If I let this exist, they'll destroy each other, and the world will get destroyed. Now, I won't have to do it. They'll do it themselves. So God says, fine, I want to start from scratch. I'm going to bring this flood. I'm going to take these animals, and keep the species. So when Noah comes out of the ark, all these species will be able to replenish. Some will be used for the sacrifice that Noah will give, etc. So the world's going to change. Man not necessarily going to change. And God says, I'm not going to destroy the world again. I understand that man has, evil thoughts, from a very early age, from a very early time. So God says, okay, I created man in this way, but I still have to destroy the world. So now we get back to what happened to Noah. Noah survived. He didn't steal. Right? He wasn't part of that. He was righteous. We see that he even learned Torah because he said that he's going to distinguish between pure and impure animals. The obvious question Rashi asks, how do you know what's pure and impure? Right? So he must have learned Torah. He had prophecy as well. So it wasn't just that he was a little bit better than everyone else and therefore he survived. He was much better than everyone else. At the same time, we have to look at it in a little bit different way. Because, in essence, Noah builds an ark. The miracle of the ark, no matter how big it is, he brings in all the animals. Right? From birds to mammals, primates, creepy crawly things, you name it. Whatever was an animal he brought in. And they came in. But there are millions and millions of species of all these different animals. The fact that the ark, even though as big as it was able to have everybody stay within it, have all the animals and the people stay within it, for that amount of time, is pretty miraculous. Right? We don't, the commentaries, discuss that, to a certain extent, but we can't imagine. I mean, you have millions and millions of species, of creepy crawly things and reptiles and, birds and, whatever it is. So the fact that the ark was able to survive that is nothing short of miraculous. Be that as it may, what does Noah do? Noah builds an ark, right? He builds his ark. So for 120 years, it's the lifespan of a person. He's building day in and day out. Builds a little bit more, takes a few more boards, this, that, building. So people come up to him and say, hey, Noah, what are you doing? So he says, I'm building an ark. So they all laugh at him and say, oh, what are you doing? You're building an ark? What are you building an ark for? So he says, don't you understand? God's going to bring a flood. Right? He's going to bring a flood. And he's going to wipe out mankind, man and animal. So you better repent. You better look into your ways. Because in a short amount of time, God is going to do this. Now you imagine a person looking at him and says, oh, I see you're building this big ark. God's going to bring this flood. This is what you're telling me. Very nice. They look up and they see, wow, 75 and sunny. Like San Diego, all day, all year round. Beautiful weather. Tremendous. They say, Noah, good luck. Have fun building the ark. Right? They made fun of him, they scorned him, they mocked him. So what did Noah say? He said, okay, he'll die. Okay, so what? He'll die. What can I do? Another person comes, same thing. Noah, what are you doing? I'm building an ark. Looks up in the sky and says, wow, 75 and sunny. It's the way it is all year round. Can't imagine it's going to be a flood. Say, okay, he'll die. Next. Right? And they keep coming. Noach didn't save anybody except his own family. If he would have been involved in Jewish outreach, they would have fired him after a month. If that. They would have said, how many people did you save? How many people did you bring back? How many people did you give Torah to? How many people did you inspire? And who gets saved? Him and his kids. He had the merit to be saved. And he had the merit to save his children. But if you build an ark for 120 years, as righteous as he was, that's what the Torah says, right? Let's not make a mistake. It says he was righteous, perfect in his generations. He wasn't a slouch. He didn't rest on his laurels. He understood what was going on. He understood he was being saved and his family was being saved and nobody else. But God had a higher directive. He understood no one would be saved. But why didn't he go out and try and save people? Why didn't he try and give people inspiration so they could have been saved as well? It could be, if he would have been strong enough to do such a thing, then he could have saved thousands. Compare that to Abraham. What did Abraham do? Abraham came on the scene, and he recognized that God created, that there was a God. He created the world, and he saw a master plan of how everything worked. Although questioned exactly when he did it, and how old he was. Was he 3? Was he 40? It doesn't matter, but he lived in a world steeped in idolatry. So people would say, people would ask him, and he said there's one God. They said, really? Has he ever spoken to you? No. But I know through the design of the universe and the way the world is set up, God exists. I said, what are you, a fruitcake? What do you mean? He's never spoken to you. You have no real proof. I got my God right here. Here's Bob. Don't leave home without him. Stick him back in your pocket. Here's Bob again. Here's Sarah. Here's John. Here's, you name your idol, whatever it is. They thought he was out of his mind. I mean, it's hard to imagine today. People bowing down to things, even though, there are major religions of idolatry. Nonetheless, certainly not as strong as it was back then. So he brought this idea of absolute monotheism to the world. When God saw that, he understood who Abraham was and who he's going to be. God chose him. So 10 generations after Noah comes Abraham, and then you have Abraham, you have Isaac, you have Jacob, and eventually they become the Jewish people. So he took an icon. Avraham was an icon. The Ramchal says he's the source. Everyone else comes out of him with the branches. So he's the source of absolute monotheism. And he understood Torah at a very strong level even before it's given, which needs more discussion. But be that as it may, Abraham and Sarah save thousands. They have thousands of people they bring under their wing that convert through them. And he did unbelievable acts of loving kindness as well, unparalleled loving kindness. That's why Yishmael, who's a son of his loving kindness gone exponentially, right? And the Arabs, the Muslims are tremendously hospitable people. In general, not necessarily when they're killing and murdering people, but in general, they're extremely hospitable. And if you don't take their hospitality, they get tremendously offended. So that's taking having guests to another extreme. And that's why Yishmael, and that's why the people of Yishmael have that character trait. Because they inherited it from Avram, but it went to a different level. Be that as it may, Avram is known as acting in a great way when it comes to having guests. Right? We'll see in upcoming Parshas when, after he has circumcision, he's 100 years old, he's still looking for guests when he would have been exempt from having guests. Be that as it may, he exemplifies that character trait. So, if Noach over here would have been closer to Abraham's generation, don't you think some of Abraham's wisdom and Achnasas Orchim and having guests would have rubbed off? Sure would have, would seem. So that's why Noach himself, what was his job? He built the ark and he brings the animals in. But whilst they're in the ark, Noach has an obligation to go around feeding them, taking care of them. And once, when he's late, giving a lion his dinner, lunch, whatever it was, lion smacked him and he became lame. Because he didn't get, he was hungry and he was late. So what's the reason? What's the reason he had to go through this? And he was busy 40 days feeding them and taking care of them. Because he don't understand a simple thing, or relatively simple thing. And that is that one of the things Jews are tremendously known for is acts of loving kindness, of doing chesed. If you see somebody, a Jew that doesn't do acts of chesed or acts of loving kindness, then either there's something wrong with his soul, or in fact he might not be Jewish. That's one of the main character traits of a Jew, is that they do acts of loving kindness. They get embarrassed easily, right? And they have compassion for others, and they help others. So Noach had a whole generation that he could have helped. And the people came and said, Noach, what are you doing? He had a golden opportunity to bring them back or try and save them, so to speak, from destruction. And he didn't. He just said, I'm building an ark. And he said, oh, good luck. And he said, okay, goodbye. And that's it. And he left them. So there's another command in the Torah. The Torah says you have to rebuke your fellow Jew. But there's always a but. If you rebuke in a way that he's going to hate you more, and he's going to hate Torah more, then there's no mitzvah. So today, even previous generations, it's already been a lost art, how to rebuke someone. Because you don't rebuke somebody by telling them, oh, you're doing this, you're doing that, and it looks like you're just picking on them and making them feel bad. If you could do it in a way it's going to exude love, and that people are going to see that, and they're going to say, oh, that's the way. Oh, I've been making a mistake my whole life. Why didn't I think of that? So then that would be all right. If not, and the if not is probably the reality today, that we don't know how to give rebuke. Today, I'll tell a story. It's a famous story with the Chofetz Chaim, that the Chofetz Chaim heard there was a student that in his yeshiva that was smoking on Shabbos, and that student was leaving the yeshiva. So the rebuke that the Chofetz Chaim gave him was, he called the student in, he grabbed his hand, he squeezed his hand, and he said the word Shabbos. Shabbos. And he started to cry. That's all the Chofetz Chaim said. So this person said after that he would never break Shabbos again. Right? He would never, smoke, on Shabbos again. If you can give rebuke like that through love, through that amount of love, and the person sees it, and the person can harness it and see it's real, not just saying, oh, you're going to fry, and oh, you're going to do this, and oh, you're going to do that. God's going to say, go to hell yourself. If I'm going to go to hell, I might as well enjoy myself. Right? Don't forget the famous verse, eat, drink, and be merry, lest tomorrow I die. So if I'm going to die, let me enjoy life. You're going to make me feel bad. You're going to make me feel guilty. It's not going to work. Right? That type of quote-unquote tough love doesn't work today. Might have worked in previous generations, not anymore. Or if you tell Sephardic people today, if they do X, Y, or Z, then, the punishment in the next world is going to be that much worse. So they're much closer to tradition than Ashkenazim. One of the reasons I've heard people say is because the Enlightenment didn't hit them. Their communities were so insular that the Enlightenment didn't affect them. So because it didn't affect them, they were much closer to the tradition than Ashkenazim. So there, you bring fire and brimstone, you can work with them. You do it with an Ashkenazi, more of an intellectual, more, worldly in different ways, let's say, that's a much harder sell. So, they'll say, I'm going to fry in hell. No, you go to hell. I'm going to enjoy. Right? That's a little more difficult. So what's the point? The point is now we have to look at a different aspect of this. So we understand Noach was not as great in chesed, in acts of loving kindness as Avram. That's clear. But, and we know that he had to do these acts of loving kindness and feed all the animals and take care of them because he never learned the lesson properly. Okay. So we could say, maybe he lacked, he lacked certain things, but he was still good enough to be saved. And if he's still good enough to be saved, then why are we going to hold it against him? So the answer is that each individual is created with unlimited potential. Whatever the source of their soul is, whatever their potential is in this world, only that person can reach it, nobody else. So that means that I cannot help someone else fulfill their potential. They have certain potential, and they have to reach it themselves. Right? They can't help me fulfill whatever my potential is, because I was given certain genes, certain family structure, certain siblings, certain social and economic situation. Everyone's different. But each one has a mission. And if you have the mission, as we spoke about last week, you don't want to blow it. Because if you blow it, this is it. Usually, a person, when they come to this world, this is like their last chance in order to fix up their soul for whatever it needs to go through. So a person would ask, how do I know what I'm supposed to fix up? Figure, right, I've heard a number of people say this, figure that whatever it is that's most difficult for you to do, like the most difficult, like you would never do it in a million years. The thing that's the most difficult probably is what you're doing in this world in order to fix that up. Now, that's a general statement. May not be 100% true. But normally, something that's hard for someone to do, that's probably, what they have to work on the most. So, if we don't get it right, we saw that you can go, in different directions, however God is going to judge it. So you look at Noach, and even though he was saved, and his family was saved, nonetheless, the Zohar says the flood is called the flood of Noach. The flood of Noach, what did he do? He didn't cause it. Man was inherently evil, so God's not going to wipe him off the face of the earth. Noach found compassion in God's eyes, found grace in God's eyes. If he found grace in God's eyes, and he's the only one that's saved, then why in the world are you going to hold it against him? You're going to say it's the flood of Noach? And because of him this whole thing happened? No. Noach was a great person. Right? He's righteous. He's perfect. Right? We're finding, maybe a flaw here or there that, deep down there was something wrong. He wasn't as great as Abraham. That's true. But he's not being compared to Abraham. Abraham had the source of his soul. And Noach has the source of his soul. But the question is, What if Noah's soul could have been better? Could have been bigger? What if he had the ability to be Abraham? Or be like him? Ooh, we just got into a very touchy subject. The reason is because we all have unlimited potential. He could have reached greatness, but he didn't. He reached it to a certain level, but he didn't get past where God wanted him to. So you say, so what do you want from him? That was the source of his soul. That's what he could do. But it's a lack, just like in all of us. Whatever our potential is going to be, we want to try and maximize and try and go beyond. My Rebbe always says, if you shoot for the stars, you may not end up in the stars, but you won't end up in the earth either. You shoot for the moon and hopefully you end somewhere in the middle. But if you have low expectations, then you end up in a low place. If you have high expectations, you might not end up in a high place, but you won't end up in a low place. Because you'll do what it takes, to get there. Take any professional athlete that actually makes it. And they spent years and years and years of training. Well, maybe also taking steroids and other things to help gain, an illegal advantage. Be that as it may, they work like a dog to be the best. They don't say, boy, am I happy being second. Boy, am I happy being mediocre. No, they want to be the best. Okay, they might not be able to be. Vince Lombardi once said, right, famous coach for the Green Bay Packers, once said the worst feeling he ever felt was finishing second. I mean, finishing second. At that time, how many football teams were there? 15, 14, 12, right? Whatever the number was. And he finished 13 out of 14. Or today, 26 out of 27. That's still the top 90%. And he says, it's terrible. You know what the feeling is finishing second? Oh, we lost the Super Bowl by, it doesn't matter, by 5 points, by 20 points, on a last second play, whatever it is. But we didn't win. But you beat everybody else. You finished second. Now, finishing second's for wusses, my language. No one wants to finish second. You want to be the best. Torah any different? No. You want to be the best spiritually you can be. We're not going to rest on our laurels. God's not going to let us. He's going to take us to task for that. So if you have higher potential and you don't reach it, you're held accountable on probably multiple levels. You may be exempt in certain things, but it's better not to play with fire. So at the end of the day, after 120 years, a person should want to say, I did everything I could. May not be true, but we hope that. I tried to maximize the day as best as I could. I tried to do as much as I could. I tried to learn as much as I could. I tried to give charity as much as I could. I tried to help others as much as I could. And you go in front of God and say, I did. I tried. And God will either say yay or nay. He'll bring all the angels for all the actions that you did. And he'll judge it however he sees it. So hopefully, we'll get a good judgment. But we have to be honest. Am I really utilizing what I need to do? Am I maximizing that potential? So here, Noach's potential was not maxed out. Or seems to be not maxed out. Because we see in chapter 7 that chapter 7 verse 16, it says, the animals came, male and female of all flesh, as God has commanded him, and Hashem shut it on his behalf. What does that mean? He shut it on his behalf, like he shut the door. So Rashi says there were animals, other animals and people like wanted to kill him because of what he was doing, and God had to throw him in the ark in order to save him, and then he brought the flood and took care of it. Took care of everybody else. Others learned that would be a more simple explanation. Others learned God had to force him into the ark. What do you mean force him into the ark? What, he didn't think the flood was coming? So it was brought down that Noach is one of Katnei Emunah. He's of small belief, meaning his belief in God was lacking in some way. That he didn't want to go into the ark, essentially. So, which begs the question, what do you mean? What do you mean he didn't want to go in the ark? He didn't believe God was going to bring the flood? So the commentaries say that no, he understood. He was a prophet, right? He understood God was going to bring a flood. But God has a tremendous amount of compassion, right? It's one of the 13 attributes, right? Hashem ke'rachum v'chanun erech apayim rav chesed. His erech apayim is tremendous amount of compassion until that compassion runs out. But he has tremendous compassion. If God has tremendous compassion, Noach thought, then he's not going to destroy the world. He didn't believe that aspect of God's compassion would not win out, and that he would uproot that decree in order that the world wouldn't be destroyed, man and beast included. I mean, if God said he's going to do something, he'll do it. Doesn't have to change his mind, right? So we can pray, and we can try, and uproot bad decrees, like we did on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, and continue to pray that, we should be safe, God should take care of us, different ways. At the same time, Noach really believed that God's attribute of compassion would win out. And he was wrong. It was wrong. So, at the last second, God zips him in. Not because he didn't believe, but because he thought that God's compassion would win out. So, there's another knock against him, and that is that he lacked perfect faith. There were others that had greater perfect faith. They didn't even question, right? When it comes to Abraham, when we speak about Abraham, and maybe we'll speak a little bit about the Akedah and the binding of Isaac. He'd gone through 9 trials. The 10th trial was the binding of Isaac. Now, if we look at that, it goes against everything that he was taught, everything that he believed. So what happened? He went and did what God told him to do, no question about it. The Satan tried to stop him in different ways, and he said, God, you want me to do this? Take care of this swamp. Otherwise, if I drown, I'm not going to be able to do this. Different miracles occurred during the way. But his faith was perfect. He didn't question. Here, there's, a little bit of question. So this little bit, this little bit of question is a knock on him. But you'll tell me, didn't you just start at the beginning? You started at the beginning and said he was perfect in his generations. That faith was good enough for that generation. Right? He didn't need complete faith. He was perfect for that generation. Compared to Abraham, he wasn't Abraham. Could he have been? He had the potential. We all have potential. We just don't think, we can do very much. Because we're on a very low level, but this generation has a problem with self-esteem. And that we don't think, we don't think we can do so much. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says, and Ethics of Our Fathers tells us If you learned a lot of Torah, don't think you're so great. The reason you shouldn't think you're so great is because that's what I created you for in the first place. Oh, you're so great. You learned so much Torah. Look how great you are compared to everyone else. No. You learned a lot of Torah. That's great, but that's what you're supposed to do. So I heard a great Rav once say that that what we have to do today, this generation, for our children, is to build them up and tell them constantly, giving them praise, not knocking them, giving them a tremendous amount of praise and building them up, building up their self-esteem. So I once asked this Rav, I said, but if you do that, in reality, aren't they going to think, aren't they going to become snobby? They're going to think that God's gift to the world because you're telling them how great they are. So that this Rav told me, he said, don't worry. He said, I deal with all kinds of cases. I'll deal with that also. Like I could deal with people who think, have big egos and think they're so great. He said, yeah, that should really be the problem. He said, that's not the problem. Today, people are just crushed. And we're very good at crushing people as well, teachers as well, unfortunately. Crushing people and, knocking them down. So kids have to be constantly built up. Being built up, doesn't mean they're going to turn out snobby and think that they're God's gift to the world. And that, they're not touchable in certain ways. Some people may have a chip on their shoulder. That's forbidden. That's for sure. Right? But the vast majority, have extremely low self-esteem. For whatever reason. So, that has to be built up. And even in ourselves, right? We can't think, we're nothing and we'll always be nothing. Imagine, how small a person can feel. You live in a certain place, in a certain town, in a certain state, in a certain country, on a certain continent, on a specific planet. Okay, now we're getting smaller. In a specific, in a certain galaxy. And there are other galaxies, whatever. So, I'm always fond of saying, we consider ourselves a very small, infinitesimally small piece of cosmic dust. So if you're starting from that premise, and you think, I came from this small town, in a small city, in a city, in a state, in a country, does it really matter what I do? Doesn't matter. I speak nicely. I don't speak nicely. In the bigger scheme of things, okay, I'm a human being. We're different from animals. We have the ability to think. We have the ability to reason. We have the ability even to make mistakes or to make good choices. We're the pinnacle of creation if we live our lives properly. So we could have a chip on our shoulder. We should to a small extent. You have to have some level of self-esteem. If you have no self-esteem at all, just be walked on your whole life. So you have to have some aspect of that. Because then you build. When you understand who you are. You understand there's a higher force above you, and there are greater people that know much more, and you become humbled very easily. That's not a problem. But if you start from the bottom and always think you're going to end up on the bottom, then you'll end up at the bottom. See, the power of persuasion. We can say things to ourselves even, and just knock ourselves, because that's what the Eighth Hour wants. The Eighth Hour wants to destroy. It says, we'll make a generation of people with tremendously low self-esteem. Because you know what's going to happen? They won't be able to do anything. They'll learn Torah, a little bit. They're not going to give themselves over to learn Torah. They'll learn a little bit here, a little bit there. That'll be enough. They're not going to die for it. They're not going to go to sleep thinking, I had a question, I couldn't answer it. Can't sleep. Well, that was previous generations. This generation, it's enough if you learn a certain amount of time, because you're doing more than most people, probably. Can't rely on that. So, if we have potential, and we have unlimited potential, we don't want to have to hear that later on in life, what's been done has been all for naught. Because you could have done much more. As the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says, repent the day before you die, because you don't know when you're going to die. So, Noach and his generation, tremendous. Saved when no one else is saved. At the same time, compared to others, he was lacking. And there's a knock against that, because it seems that when it came to helping others or trying to save others, he didn't do it. Maybe he felt he didn't have the potential. Maybe he felt that people would laugh at him. Or, take Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu grows up in Pharaoh's house, and he puts the coals in his mouth and has a lisp. So he has to have Aaron speak for him, because he's embarrassed. He said, why is Pharaoh gonna take me seriously if I speak like this? Like, why should you take me seriously? I can't put two sentences together properly. I, the greatest prophet of all time. Alright, but he was embarrassed. God told him, don't worry about it. He said, I give the power of speech also. He didn't take his speech away. He didn't say, okay, I'm going to fix you up, and you'll be able to speak properly. He said, fine. You go in front of Pharaoh, and Aaron will speak. Right? I'll give you the words to say, and he'll say it. But say, I don't have the potential. What do you mean you don't have the potential? You're the greatest person that ever lived. And you're going to take out the Jewish people. It's like, me? From where he came from? It was unbelievable. What he became and how he was able to, survive the people, and how difficult it was taking the people out and then listening to them, and, and everything that went into it. See, at the end of the day, we see one thing. And this theme comes up over and over and over again. And the theme is, and hopefully this will help a lot of people realize that whether a person's older or a person's younger, they should take this idea to heart. And that is never, ever, ever rest on your laurels. In other words, you learn something today, you learn tomorrow. You learn the next day, you learn after that. You keep compiling information and learning, different things, because those are building blocks for the future. And eventually you're going to learn a lot, and you're going to take a lot to heart, and you're going to want to envelop what you learn. All right, people at different levels. But you never, ever want to hear after 120 years, oh, what a wasted life. You could have done so much more. That's a portion of hell, because you're going to freeze. Your soul is going to freeze. At some level, it's going to happen to all of us, because, not everyone reaches their ultimate potential. But, at the end of the day, what we really want is that potential, whatever we can do, we do. And we don't say, well, I learned yesterday and, I'm doing better than most. I had someone say, I'll end with this story. I was giving a class about this idea about reaching potential. And someone, an 18-year-old kid, raised his hand and he says, Rabbi, he says, I want you to cut me some slack. He says, I'm holding better than 95% of world Jewry. Kid's 18. Right? Doesn't look like the most righteous of the generation. Let's just put it that way. So he says, Rabbi, I want you to give me some slack. Because I'm doing things more than 95% of world Jewry. So I said, let's say I agree with you, which I don't. But let's say what you're saying is true. If what you're saying is true, what if by small chance, even a very, very small chance, the God above disagrees? What if he says you're right? You are doing better than a lot of people in that generation, because there are 5 million Jews who don't know anything about Torah whatsoever. And the biggest question they'll ask is if I eat ketchup or mustard on my hot dog. That'll be the biggest philosophical question. Eating a hot dog, ketchup, mustard. Someone says, what about relish? Oh, I didn't think about relish. Ketchup, mustard, relish, this, that. That's where most people are holding. So they say, okay, you're holding better than 5 million of those people that you're so proud of. Right? That's what God could say. I'm not playing God. I'm just, playing the other side. If he disagrees and you rested on your laurels, you're in big trouble. So then someone screams out, well, if I keep kosher and I keep Shabbos, am I safe? And someone says, what if I hold by this specific rabbinical supervision? Like, oh, he's dead. Right? Everyone says, no, he's dead. Forget about him. But they said, then someone said, but how do I know what my potential is? I said, that's a great question. You don't. So they said, if I don't know what my potential is, then how do I go about reaching it? And I said, that I have an answer for. And the answer is, since we don't know what our potential is, are you going to now just go at a slow pace to try and get it? Or you want to go, you want to run with it and do as much as you can, before the year 120? The answer is we want to run with it. I mean, it doesn't mean, learning without knowledge, just like speed reading and not having any understanding. At the same time, as we mentioned, you're going to build knowledge. When you build knowledge, you'll be rich in other ways. And that helps us get to the next step. Because we don't always have the same trials and tribulations year in and year out to reach potential. If we're growing spiritually, then we're getting different trials and tribulations on a yearly basis. So when we come to Yom Kippur, next year, we'll be beating our chest for things that we didn't do, the year before. They're new things, new challenges, that come up. No one's exempt. Everybody goes through them. The Talmud says, I said that was the last story, so I guess I have to end shortly. But, in these difficult times of what's going on now, especially in the land of Israel, that, we're in the time right before the Messiah comes. So the Talmud says there are two things that will save you from the end of days. One is Torah, learning Torah, and the other is chesed, is doing acts of loving kindness. So I asked many years ago a great rabbi, what can we do to save ourselves from this? He's like, what? You think I know more than what the Talmud says? Talmud says Torah, Gimel chesed, right? It says, to learn Torah and to do acts of loving kindness. So me being a little bit obnoxious, I said, and? You got anything else? It's like, that's it. You think I know more than that? That's it. So that's what we have. Torah, in the bigger scheme of things, should be a guard for us. It should guard us from things happening. Now, other things could offset that, but in general, that's true. Chesed, we do acts of loving kindness. That certainly, if there's a decree, certainly could uproot it. Charity, giving charity also. Right, but if we do things for the right reason, i.e. for the sake of itself, not for any remuneration, not for any putting a name, a name on a plaque or something like that. Right, the greatest level of tzedakah, of charity a person can give is even without the person knowing where it came from. Yeah, but you get no credit for that. Don't worry, you'll get the credit later. You don't need it now. Not only that, you get a much higher level later than if you would do it now, than if you would get it now. So, when we see what's going on, and we see chaos in different ways, we look at the world, and we say, like, God, you created this world. Like, what in the world's going on? God says, yeah, of course I created the world. Man's got free will. They want to destroy each other? I'm going to let it happen if it gets to a certain. So if I do what's absolutely necessary, then that'll be good. If not, then, we have no idea what's going to be. So we want to protect ourselves the best way possible. And the best way possible is Torah, Chesed, mitzvahs. Right? I want to learn as much as I can. I want to help others as much as I can. And I want to do acts of loving kindness. Those things uproot bad decrees. Now, again, there could be other things that offset that, as we mentioned. Be that as it may. Be that as it may. When we come in front of God, and we're going to have to give an accounting, there are plenty of things we're going to be embarrassed about. But one thing is for sure, that by Rosh Hashanah, by Yom Kippur, even if we don't become the people we need to be, even if we take on things and we can't do them, we have difficulty doing them, you have to show, beyond the shadow of a doubt, at least you tried. God's not going to condemn you if you tried and you failed. Depends how much effort you put in and how much you fought against the evil inclination, all these other things. But you have to try. If you don't try, it doesn't get off the ground, and God's going to know that. If you rely on your laurels and you don't go beyond what you can do, you're going to be held accountable. So you tell me, yeah, we're going to be held accountable anyway. That's true. The question is to what level. I've seen people throughout the years, different stations of life, different religious beliefs, etc. And if people stay the same, or people say, I'm happy where I'm at, that is akin to spiritual death. The reason is because they say I don't have to grow. Because they say that it's okay to be mediocre. Trust me. Unfortunately, there are plenty of mediocre Jews that exist. When I got spurred on, I sort of vowed, not making a vow, but vowed, God's going to have a lot of claims after 120 years. I hope one of them is, why were you lazy? Why didn't you maximize? You don't want to hear those words. You want to try and show you maximize whatever you could do. And if we maximize what we can do and how we do it, and we go beyond what we think we're able to do, then God also will look the other way. Because if we go beyond beyond the letter of the law, then He also will go beyond the letter of the law. But it has to be real. You can't look more righteous than you are, and God's going to nail you for that. We take on things that we're able to do. We do what we're able to do. If you look at the life of Abraham, it's unbelievable what he accomplished. Unbelievable. We have no idea, what he accomplished. Had Noah tried a little bit, or tried more than he did, he could have possibly saved mankind. Maybe not, but he could have had the potential to save man. The world would look different today had that not happened. But it didn't. And he didn't. So that's the negative. That's really the negative, because had he been in another generation, there's no guarantee he would have been considered as great. Because there's a difference between, as as the verse in Psalm says, that we go away from evil and we do good. This generation is enough to say just don't do evil. Doing good, oh, that's a plus. That's like not part of the mitzvah. That's like extra credit. Because we're living in a tremendously wayward generation. Jewishly speaking. Even though there's tremendous amount of Torah being learned. And the Orthodox community is growing by leaps and bounds. There are millions don't know anything, about their own religion. And that's tragic. That's absolutely tragic. So, the masses, unfortunately, at the end of days, won't be able to be saved. It's only going to be individuals, whatever's left. Potentially. So, we're living in scary times in general. But even if things were quiet, isn't this the idea should be in the front of our mind? Potential, how I reach it, and what I'm able to do with it. That's what we should be thinking about. Am I maximizing my strengths? Or am I being hindered by other things? Or how do I maximize, or whatever the case is. We know what our strengths are. We know what our weaknesses are. We want it to the best of our ability to maximize. You never ever want to hear the words, but you could have. So I can tell you a personal anecdote that I was pushed very hard. And it was either sink or swim. Thank God I had good people around me. And I got thrown a number of life preservers, and I was able to swim. Didn't come easy. Didn't come without effort. Didn't come out with sweat. Didn't come without sweat. Came out with dedication, perseverance, and plenty of other things thrown in the way as well. But, if I were to look 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and been told you could do X, Y, or Z. Or no, I have to go further back than that. So go back more than 20 years ago. And if it would have been said, oh, you had this potential or that potential, I would have said, what are you kidding me? I grew up in Hicktown, Massachusetts. People are going to say, you could have been. Yeah, I could have been if I was taller. Would have been a better athlete. But, I got the short genes in my family. So, that's the way it goes. But, looking back, said, oh, you have X potential. And, you could potentially help others in the process of conversion, or, give strength to others to help them, in learning Torah, etc. I said, I have the ability to influence? I said, you're kidding me. Right? They can say, oh, that's a weak generation. But we have no idea, really, what we're capable of. Last story. When I first started teaching, I was giving some optional class at night in a certain yeshiva. And guys would tell me, I give over certain things on the Parsha or philosophy. And people would say, wow. They said, where did you learn how to teach? So inspirational, and, you seem like you have a tremendous talent. Where'd you learn that from? I said, learn that from? I don't learn it from anyone. I said, you guys are my guinea pigs. This is where I'm, starting from. I was in my early 20s. So, obviously, no one has talent by themselves. It's, comes from above. We have to acknowledge, where it comes from. But, over the years, the more knowledge the more ability to learn and do other things and different life experiences has, it's changed things tremendously, from when I started. So that in and of itself is a huge, is a huge thing. And, I'd be the first to admit, like, there's no way that I would have ever imagined, a number of things, like that. So you could say, okay, maybe you're different. You had this, you had, different opportunities and that. Yeah, there are a number of things that I had going for me that enabled me to do certain things. That's definitely true. But, at the end of the day, when it dug in and took, other people said and what you're doing and this and that, and just, you just say out of mind, out of sight. You don't let it affect you. You do what you need to do. And you learn and you learn and you learn as much as you can. And that's what my Rebbe said. He said, you learn, you learn, you learn. He said, you want to go teach, you go teach later. He said, you need the knowledge. You need the base. So once you have the base, and then you can extrapolate, take things from here and there, imagine what the power is going to be. So it was a good thing I listened, because he was right. I mean, there are other things that, came out because of that as well, but, the knowledge itself that was gained was, there's no question. At the same time, because, I got built up in different ways, and I had tremendous enjoyment, and strength, and I got, tremendous amount of strength, from it. Then other things happened, and it took it to a different level. Took it to a whole different level. But make no mistake, wasn't it wasn't easy, and I'll be the first to admit I got plenty what to learn, as well. But everything that was learned, up until that time they're all building blocks, and then you start putting things together and putting pieces together. And then because of certain life experience and other things, then you can give it over to others in a totally different way. Which I had an interview for a teaching position somewhere, and I spoke about a certain subject, and it's an amazing thing, like certain pieces of Talmud that I learned, like, years before, like certain things when I started to speak, all of a sudden, like, these things came, oh yeah, I have proof for this over here, I have something over here, or I started, like, piecing things together, like, things that entered my mind, as I was, like, giving things over. That's an amazing thing. Not tooting my own horn, I'm just saying that, you can have a tremendous amount of heavenly help. It's certainly not based on myself. But the more I saw certain things and how they worked, and how they transpired, very easy to say, look, I could rely on, doing less and maybe preparing less or other things, and, I get away with certain things. And, not work as hard. But then when you don't work as hard, you don't gain. Right? And then the more you gain and the more you work, the more it's going to stick, and the more that you'll be able to give over, and have influence. So, again, Noach had this knowledge. He had tremendous knowledge. It's just nobody got to use it. Got to benefit from it because he didn't go beyond. He didn't go beyond what he needed to do. And therefore the whole generation died, and because he had that ability, and he didn't take anyone with him, he's held accountable. So we don't want to be held accountable. We're going to be held accountable anyway for a number of things, right? Potentially, in reaching potential, we want to do everything in our power to do that. Anyone interested in conversion classes or Noahide classes, again, take a look at my Facebook page, Beyond Orthodox Conversion to Judaism, or Beyond Noahides, and my blog is at rabbichaimcoffman.blogspot.com. RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN.blogspot.com. And Wishing everyone a good Shabbos.